In this lesson, you're going to learn how to put special effects on your images. Also, how to do some cool effects on your corners. You can set up these effects in an object style that you can use over and over. So we're going to open Rocket Report working copy number 5. So we're just going to file open. We're already in that folder. We're going to go to copy 5, press open. So we've finished our 4-page newsletter down to the details now. We've got our stories placed, we've got all our graphics placed, we did an index, we did a table of contents on the front page, but now we're going to talk about a couple other things that can help to finish off the graphic elements. So we're going to look at this picture in the top right hand corner of page 2. So we're going to navigate to page 2. We're going to be looking at this picture. So I'm going to zoom in on it just a little bit. There's some nice effects that we can apply to this image or any other graphic element. So we're going to select the image, and we're going to go to Object, and if we go down to Effects, we're going to start by looking at the basic feather. So I'm going to move this window a little bit just so you can see what we're doing. So I'm going to click Preview so that you can see a preview of what's happening and what a feather does to an object. So you can see that the feather diffuses the edges of the images a little bit. You can decide how far or how wide that feather area is. So we can make it bigger or smaller there. And you can decide what kind of corners it has. So it has diffuse, rounded, sharp. We're going to make those sharp corners. And I'm going to show you now what a choke would do. So if we had a choke here, a choke just kind of sharpens the feather area. So you can see it sharpens it there. And noise makes it a little bit grainy. So I'm going to actually make this really extreme so that you can see how that looks and take that away. So feathering is kind of a cool image effect that you can do. So I'm going to actually press cancel so that I can show you another way to work the images. Now if we look at this image box, every image or graphic object has this little yellow square on it. If we click on that, it's going to bring yellow diamonds to every single corner. So this is going to help me round my corners. So I can just drag these diamonds and it's going to round my corners, and I can decide how much I want those to be rounded. So I can drag it more, it's going to round it more. I can drag it to the right a little less, and it's going to make it less. So I can go up under Object, and I can go down to corner options, and you can see here that I can bevel it, and we're going to want to press preview so you can see that. So I can bevel it, I can do like this little fancy thing, I don't really use that often. I can round it, or I can press none. We're going to leave it as rounded. I'm going to press OK. So now that I have the corners rounded, I can go to Options, Effects, and I can add that basic feather on there. Press OK. And if I press Shift W, that's going to take me into preview mode, and you can see that that looks kind of nice. And I'm going to press Escape to get back to that. So for most images, I'm going to just want a nice clean edge. So it's a good idea to put a stroke or a border on that image. So I'm going to actually navigate to this next page in this picture of the principal, and I'm going to select it. Now this particular image has a dark background, so the stroke isn't going to be noticeable here, but an image with a lighter background, if I put a stroke around the edge, it makes it seem more finished on the page. So with the picture selected, I'm going to go to the stroke indicator in my toolbar, and I'm going to make sure it's in front. So if yours looks like this, you just want to click on the stroke. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to press Apply Color. And you can see now it's this shade, but I actually want it to be black. So I'm going to come to Swatches and I'm going to press black. That's going to add a black stroke. Now you can see up here in my controls at the top, it defaults to 1 point, and while 1 point does not seem like it is that wide, it can be pretty severe. So I'm going to actually make that 0.5, and I'm just going to have that tiny stroke around, and you can see if I click off the image, it's down here at the bottom. If I press Shift W, you can see that it's right here on the bottom. It's around the whole thing, but it's easy to see because his jacket is a little lighter. So now I'm going to select the image, and we're going to talk about drop shadows. So when I go up to Object, Effects, I can press Drop Shadow. We're going to move this out of the way so you can see that drop shadow, and I'm going to work on that. So when I choose drop shadow in the effects window with preview turned on, it automatically gives a black shaded drop shadow with a 75% opacity, and you can see that here. And then it has these offset numbers. That basically measures how far that drop shadow drops away from the picture. But for this little headshot, this opacity might be a little too severe. So I'm going to bring the opacity down to 50. And I pressed OK, so it took that window away. So I'm just going to go back to Object, Effect, and Drop Shadow. It's going to bring that back up. And I'm going to bring the offset a little bit closer to the image. So I'm going to just press the down arrow once on both the X and the Y. And that's going to move that drop shadow. And the Y represents the bottom or the horizontals, and the X in this case represents the right hand side. I could also come in here and I could change the angle of that drop shadow, but I like it where it was, or about where it was. And I'm going to press OK. So now I have the drop shadow and a stroke on this image. I might want all of the headshots in my publication to be formatted in the same way to provide continuity and professionalism to our projects. So I'm going to save these attributes to an object style. So earlier we learned about paragraph and character styles. So the same principles apply. Object styles are similar, but we're retaining attributes that are applied to graphics and not text. So we're going to come over here to the Object Styles panel. And under the Options menu, we're going to press New Object Style. And we're going to name that style to indicate what that does to the object to make things easier. So I'm going to say it's a 0.5 stroke and a drop shadow. And I'm going to put DS for drop shadow just so it's a little bit shorter. And I'm going to press OK. So now every headshot I put in my publication from here on in, I can simply select it and come to the object styles and apply that style that I just created. You've learned how to do special effects on images and graphics, and you've also learned how to save those attributes to the object styles so that you can use them over and over again. These final touches can make your project look a lot more professional.